We'll take over and
Okay.
talk a little bit about what CASA is, and we'll go from there. So please welcome both you guys. Really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Rich Pais. I'm with Luzerne County CASA, and this is Joan Peterson. She is Lackawanna County CASA. So you have options in both counties. But the easiest way for you to understand, I think, what CASA is to understand how CASA came to be. So about 25 years ago, we're not unique here, okay? In Seattle, Washington, a judge came into dependency court from other kinds of law, other kinds of criminal law, and other kinds of, corporate decisions and the kinds of stuff more typical of what you find in a courthouse. And he began to get cases involving children who were dependent, who had been removed from one way or another from their parents or under the jurisdiction of their version of children and youth. And he was finding that he had to make decisions about these children based on a paragraph worth of information and a couple of hours spent by a caseworker. And these decisions would affect those children for the rest of their lives. And he was getting to see and review these cases once every 3 to 6 months with another 2 or 3 hours worth of information and another paragraph. And it broke his heart, and it wasn't right. So he sat down with some other attorneys to try to figure out how can we fix this. And the realization was, you can't fix it through the system. And I share your political philosophy. So the government wasn't going to be able to create a system of caring, loving individuals who spoke in the best interest of children. The only people who could do that were individual adults. So CASA was born from that. Court-appointed special advocates. And what works and what we do is we train individual people like yourselves with some fairly intense training on the law, on trauma, on abuse, and more on education and educational law, because the school districts are playing an enormous part in this, but that's a whole other night. Okay, and we will, after training you, assuming you have a good record, don't have any criminal issues or anything like that, that would prohibit you from doing it, we will then attempt to match you with one child or sibling unit that our dependency court judge, in my case it's Judge Rogers, has decided could use the benefit because she needs the knowledge of a court-appointed special advocate. Now, I'm not familiar with Lackawanna County, but I can tell you what Judge Rogers tells me to tell our advocates. And she's very emotional about it. Tell me what to do for this child. Don't worry about what the law says. Don't worry about what the paradigms of children and youth say. Don't worry about what the... Get to know the child. Get to bond with that child, and frankly, get as much as you can to love that child. But also get to know the family circumstances, the in-laws, the grandparents. Go to jail and meet dad if that's what it takes. Because you are court-appointed, you have access to all the records. And one thing every CASA does after reviewing all the records in mid-cases gets angry, because a lot of what you feel we see then. But here's what we're not. I'll make sure everybody in the room understands. We're not parent attorneys and we're not parent advocates. We're advocates for the child, and we answer only to the judge. Okay? And there's a lot of power in that. Can I tell you, in my brief time, they've been able to subpoena in all kinds of medical people. We've been able to subpoena in school district people to answer for why certain plans aren't being done. The judges order mental tests and all different kinds of things. But there's a lot of gaps that are beyond the court system's ability to fix. Kinds of counseling for families that we don't really have available to us in this region like we would love to have. Kinds of services that might be available. But the judges will do whatever we ask and enable almost whatever we want. I think that almost every person that I've ever met feels separation is the absolute last thing that should occur unless there's real, genuine trauma and abuse. But we're not parental advocates, we're child advocates. And we're up to almost 50 advocates in Luzerne County now. When we started, we kind of adopted the national mission statement of we want to get the child to a permanent, loving home, either reunited in kinship or adopted as quickly as possible. We've changed that. Our mission statement now says we want to meet the immediate needs of these children as best we can and get them to the full potential that God put them on this earth for. Okay? And a lot of the kids we meet don't have clothes, they don't have food, they've been moved from different places, they've got their belongings in a garbage bag. It's difficult. And we can't really advocate for a child until we grab hold of them and we get to know them. So it's a very personal thing. So what we are seeing is we're already changing the system. Because I'll share a story with you. One story, just so you can see why, in my opinion, this kind of individual advocacy for one child, done over and over again, will change the system in the way you're all wishing it to change. So we had a young lady who had horrible experiences. She was abused when she was young. She was adopted by a family, but the family was never counseled as to how that abuse would affect her when she became a young teenager. And anyone who's walked that walk knows that when you become a young teenager, it all comes flooding right back. And nobody feels like mom. Even though mom, in this case, was a large part of the problem. The girl acted out, she had a lot of troubles, attempted suicide, ran away, the adoption failed. Girl goes into amazing, gets her act together, goes to a residential treatment facility, gets A's in school, graduates high school, gets a job, is ready to transition from a group home and independent living to transitional living. She's now 19, okay? We got a CASA appointed at 19. She's doing great. Why? Because she has absolutely no one, even at 19, to get out. So all that had to happen to really get this girl the life skills she needs is she needed to transfer from one style of living in a building to another. She had recovered all her life. She had done everything the court had asked her to do. She had done everything everyone in school done, and she had made amazing progress. But somehow or another, children and youth just couldn't seem to get that letter written that would move her from one building to another. For 4 months, she languished in one place and not the other. So we got to court, and we coached the advocate. If you do nothing else in court today, get her in the right place. So we got to court, and everything was going great. Judge asked, why is she where she is? And, well, we haven't had the time, and the attorneys aren't sure where the money's coming from. We're still trying to figure out where this is going to happen, and we can't really be sure that this is going to be there, and we're still looking for the programs. And if you've ever heard this, you know what I'm talking about. So we speak in court, and the judge cares more about what we say than anybody else. Trust me. That's why she appoints us. She turned to CASA and said, what should I do? She said, this girl did everything we asked of her. And let me remind you of her story. One thing that happens in court without a CASA is there's a series of reactions that reoccur every 3 to 6 months. The CASA can always bring back the full story, which changes things. So the CASA told the story, did everything she would. Now every day she stays where she is, we've lied to her. She's done everything we've asked, but she's not getting the true essence of what we promised. And every day that she's not getting her life skills in the new facility is one less day she's going to have to learn how to be a real adult. The judge got so mad that she said, I'm going off the record, and she went into chambers. When she went into chambers, the supervisor from Children and Youth ran into the hallway with her cell phone, came back 10 minutes later, knocked on the chambers door and says, Judge, we have the letter to move her.
Wow.
That's what a CASA can do. I got a dozen of those, you probably got 100.
Stories?
Yes, like that. There's bad ones and good ones, but my point is, if you want to begin, now when a CASA is assigned to a case, as you can imagine, now actually what's interesting about this is there are a lot, you may not believe this, some of you, but there are so many good-hearted caseworkers at Children and Youth who are struggling to get things done. And we are now being requested by the caseworkers to help them get the treatments, get the school district to do what's supposed to be done, to help them say things that sometimes they feel like they can't even say. So we feel like between the judge, we have Judge Rogers, who's telling us, tell me what to do and I'll do it, and advocates who are willing to pour their lives and hearts and emotions into the cases, we're seeing things change. If you should talk to us about being a CASA, there's 2 things that I heard at National CASA, and I love it. There's 2 things that will happen to you. You'll change the life of a child, and your heart will be forever broken. Because when you walk into this world, you're going to see things, and some of you know, things happen. But you will make a change, you will have an effect. And the people, and I'll leave it with you. I remember when I took the job about a year ago, my mother and my wife said, aren't you going to be work? Because I'm not a social worker. I come from a nonprofit background, and I'm a biologist by training. And if you ever want to talk about all the environmental stuff, but aren't you worried about being around all that negative stuff? But you know, the truth is, and I know Joan will back me up, yeah, terrible things are happening to these kids, and we have to struggle against not just the things that happen to them, but then against the system that abuses them the second time. But you know what lifts your heart up every day when you work where we do? The advocates. Because no matter what happens, they double down on these kids. If the kid screws up because normal is messed up, you know what I'm saying? Normal for some of these kids is messed up. So when they do really well, it's uncomfortable and they go back. The advocates double down. When the system tries to screw the kids, the advocates have righteous anger. And the really cool thing is they can express it to the lady who holds the hammer. And that's really fun to see people run out of the hall and make a phone call. That's really neat. So, no. Oh, we have training starting April 7th.
Since 2008. It's always been a small program, so if none of you have ever heard of it or haven't seen a CASA appointed to a child, that's probably why. At this point, we have about 16 advocates. We're serving maybe, it changes every day, 14, 15 kids. But we always are open to looking for people who would be great advocates. If anyone knows a child that needs an advocate, absolutely, I have my cards, you can call me. So what we do is, as Rich was saying, advocates are trained. Obviously, we do a 30-hour training. We go through all of the child protection laws. We go through abuse, neglect, all of that stuff. We do background clearances. We make sure that these folks are obviously clear, appropriate to be with kids. Because we want them to be able to be alone with that child. We want them to be able to talk to them independently of any other influence, without their caseworker, without a foster parent, and in some cases without their biological family with them. Lackawanna County has made a lot of progress, and some of you might not want to hear this, a lot of progress in the last few years as far as reducing the number of kids that are in foster care. And one of the things that we're doing now as CASA is supporting kids to stay in their own homes with their families. Children and youth might have dependency of a kid, but we will have a CASA that goes into the home and is monitoring the child in the home with the family to try to help them stay there, rather than to put them in placement and try to get them back. And that's been, I think it's a great program. It was at a hearing just this morning where the CASA was saying, no, I think they can do it. We just need to give them a little bit more support. I don't think that child, they don't need to be in foster care. Give them another, chance. A few more months. Let's really try to make this work. And I really, that's great. I'd like to see that. And that's the kind of advocates we really want to have in our program, is people who are really willing to get in there and help families, because that's really what we want to do, is to help families stay together. We've all seen the research. We know the outcomes. Ultimately, everyone knows what's best for kids 90% of the time is to stay with their family. Foster care outcomes aren't good. Kids who stay in foster care for long periods of time, definitely, the long-term studies will show that they're really negatively impacted by that. No kid should ever be in foster care for years at a time. And, foster parents are just people too. We all know that they're human. So anyway, we are also training more advocates in April. So anyone that's interested certainly should, if you're in Lackawanna County, if you know anybody that would be great, send them my way, Luzerne County, and she'll train them. They seem to train at the same time, so it really works out. So, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I have a couple questions, and then
Yeah.
I'm sure that we're going to have a room full of questions. So it's great, yeah, come on, get up there together and do this. One of my first part questions is how are you received with the courts? Richard said that they have a very good relationship with Judge Rogers in Luzerne. What are the judges that you deal with, and what kind of relationship or how do they, I guess, look on CASA in Lackawanna County?
I have a good relationship with the judges in Lackawanna County. Judge Moyle is the primary judge in family court at this point.
Right, okay.
They are really big on confidentiality, and that's why, as you know, they don't just let anybody in the courtroom.
No, that's right. Yeah.
And that's why the CASAs, they're trained, they've signed the Pledge of Confidentiality. They're allowed to come and sit in the courtroom for that child's hearing. They're allowed to, have access to any records for that child. And that's why it's so important that, I know when people want to help, people want to get involved, the best way to do that is to get trained and be assigned to help a child, so that way they have access to that information and they're not barred by confidentiality from being in that courtroom.
Okay. Another question. How are you allowed, Rich or Joan, are you allowed to request a case, or is it just appointed?
The judge appoints CASA. We say, and I'm not sure how you handle it, we say that anyone who is a stakeholder in a child's life can request a CASA. There's two avenues of that. You can request in Luzerne County directly to Judge Rogers, because she is the one who directly makes the issuance.
Okay.
In the case where we have a caseworker, the judge herself, the master, perhaps a service provider, a mental health expert, a teacher, a coach.
The family can request a CASA.
The family can request a CASA, absolutely. The grandparents, anyone who's a stakeholder can request a CASA. The judge makes the decision. The way it works is the judge will get the request. She'll decide if a CASA is appropriate. She'll send us a form saying, I'd like a CASA for this case, and we'll have very minimal knowledge of it. If we agree to take it, we then get a second order from the judge that allows us to go to Children and Youth and copy the file. Then we study that file and try and look through our pool of applicants to find someone who matches. I have one case as executive director. He's a young teenage boy whose father died, was bullied in school, and has been struggling. My father died when I was young. I was bullied in school and I struggled. That's what we're trying to do. That's street credibility. You're trying to make a match that puts a person's life experience and time availability with that child to make it so much more richer than easy to work.
Have you looked at cases where certain orders have actually been reversed after you actually were able to maybe listen and say, wait a minute, maybe you haven't gotten all the information correctly, or is that more not the norm? Go ahead, Joan.
Not an order per se, but a
plan.
When you go to court, there'll be the Children and Youth will bring a petition.
Right.
And often they'll have a family service plan that they've laid out, like this is what we think the plan should be. The judge has to
approve it or
approve the order,
Right.
so that it's put into the record. And often after a CASA testifies, they'll modify that family service plan. They might change what they were ordering in the petition based on the testimony or the recommendations of the CASA.
One more question.
Now, let me just go a little deeper in that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
One of the things that we coach our new CASAs to do is, I work with the state government, okay? I wasn't a big fan working there, but I worked there for a while. And one of the reasons I wasn't a big fan is I found guys did as little as possible to get as much done as they needed to. And so one of the things I've coached our CASAs to do is remember, the caseworker is a good-hearted person working for little money and not a lot of pay, trying to do the best they can with a mountain of paperwork on it. If we meet with a child 8-10 times in a month, personally, text them 12 times, talk to grandmom and granddad twice, and go visit the school. If every time we do that, we feed that information to that caseworker, you know what happens by the time we get to court with the plan? We're all in agreement. Because they begin to look to us as the source for so much more information than they could ever get. So properly done, we may disagree from time to time, but more often than not, everybody's arriving at the same place because the CASA has all the information. So it's not as, the conflict isn't as great as you might imagine.
How many hours is there a set time? I know, you have Alex back there that's CASA, right, Alex?
Yeah.
And how many hours would somebody expect to put in? Is there a set period of time, or 10 hours a month, or like I'm pretty sure there's a few folks in here that are gonna want to sign up and take this program, and I know by the time we're done, it's probably gonna spread even a little bit further. Is it 20 hours or 30 hours, or does it just vary on the individual case?
There's a minimum of, I believe it's an hour a month, one visit a month.
One visit a month, yeah.
Say you had a child who, was just doing really great and wasn't really requiring much time, attention at that point. That's the bare minimum. The average I've seen is about 10 hours.
So I mean, if you have an infant and there's grandmom, and the question is grandmom the right resource, that might not take a lot of time. If you got a teenage mother with a 14-year-old baby who's in between homes, you're going to spend a few minutes there. And we have infants and 19-year-olds and moms with babies and all of that. In Luzerne County, we have 500 kids. 500 kids, 4 guardian ad litems. In some jurisdictions, the CASA is called a guardian ad litem. Not here, but in some other parts of the country, they actually fill that role. So,
Joan, one of the things you had mentioned during your talk here was that one of the goals is to keep the children in the families.
Yes.
And you also, I think, if I've heard correctly from people that have come to us in the last a year or so, very often it's you have to have some kind of guardian there, or you have to have, you have to pay somebody to, go with visits. Does CASA sometimes substitute as those individuals that have to get paid? Because I know that sometimes is a problem where you have to pay for supervised visits. Mama needs, before she's allowed to see the child, she has to have a supervised visit. Is that something else that CASA could fill in on?
No, CASA
Okay.
can't supervise visits.
Okay, so that's something separate.
No, because visitation supervisors,
I have a degree in social science.
not only that, but they can be called to testify regarding their observation as a visit supervisor.
Okay.
It would be a conflict of interest with the
Okay.
role of CASA.
And promise last question. Funding, CASA is totally, there's no pay involved, it's totally volunteer. And CASA organization in general, because I've already been asked that, how is it funded? Is it state funded? Does it come from, it's all?
we're a little different, you go
We're
first.
completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Advocacy Alliance supports Lackawanna County CASA.
Okay,
Yeah, a lot of you probably know Advocacy Alliance. There's a lot of different programs, especially involving mental health. But we are also, we do receive funding from the county.
okay,
I'm not sure of the specifics exactly, but it is a county-funded program.
okay.
We're a completely independent 501c3 with all the hassles and struggles and fundraising.
Okay.
But right, I mean, we were very lucky because of, I'll be frank, Kids for Cash, to have a community in Luzerne County that said, wow, we need to have this work. So we were well funded at the beginning, and we have some grants that'll get us going, but we're right now, July the 3rd, you'll see the two of us in downtown Scranton at the Scrantastic celebration. That'll be a large fundraiser for us and a recruiting effort and an outreach effort for her, but we need to raise our own money to keep it going and keep our, the advocates is, we try and keep them happy and have a pizza party for them every now and then. But, we, again, they may be a little different. We tell our advocates, if you get a kid and it's a cold day in November, and he doesn't have a coat, for God's sakes, go buy him a coat, we'll get you the money. If he wants guitar lessons, you need to come and talk to me so I can go talk to a music teacher and find somewhere to get him guitar lessons. But we want our advocates to pour into the life of those kids so that any of the older kids will ask an advocate about the second meeting, how much are you getting paid for this?
Right, yeah, that would be a normal question, right, that's the question I would
And
ask.
when you say we're not, they're like, huh? Why are you doing this then?
Right,
And therein begins, at that moment, the magic begins to kind of happen. Because at that point, they open up. One of my favorite little stories, real good outcome for a case. The kids, mom and dad had a meth lab in Shikshini. And I don't go ahead, you read that in the paper every day, right? And in most other ways, they were great parents, okay? But you can't live in a meth lab. And they wouldn't go to parents because they wouldn't. So it wasn't all that bad, but the two kids were teenagers and they got separated. One went to Forest City, one went to, I don't know, Hunt Valley, wherever they were far apart. Anyway, one boy, they found the CASA found an uncle in the military. He was I think he was pretty high up in the Navy in Washington State, so I'd love to have my niece and nephew with me. Good, stable guy, great record, everything. Kids wanted to go, it would mean the siblings would be back together, they'd go out there, be with the family, great solution. I go to court, I'm sitting outside court, and the foster dad for the boy said, this is awful. I'm like, really? He says he doesn't want to go. I'm like, he doesn't? He's like, no, he's getting A's and B's in school, he's on the cross-country team, it's all going so well, which was all true. Now, this is like my third day on the job, okay? So I go over to the CASA and I'm like, hey, what up with this? He says, watch what happens in court. So we go to court and there's hugs and kisses and we're gonna go and it's great. And the CASA had already I spent I don't know, a week going over what military life would be like and having the kids talk to other military kids so they know what they're moving around. And I was like, oh, is it you? Hugs, tears, kisses. I said, why did the foster dad say that? So, well, what was the kid living with the foster parents supposed to communicate? I don't like it here. I don't like eating spaghetti on Tuesdays. I don't want to go to Catholic church. You do what you do where you are so that you can survive even when it's really good. But he trusted his CASA to speak in his best interest, to talk around, he had to, wasn't sure how mom would be, wasn't sure how foster parents would be, but if I can trust you, can we make it work? Isn't that interesting?
And that's why the CASAs need to be reviewed independently with the kids.
That's right.
So we know what they really feel and what they really want.
I'm not the only one in this type of situation, and I actually have found out about your organization before, but when I read this stuff, it looked like you only help kids who are normally in foster care. There are many mothers, like myself, we have called in reporting abuse against the father because the father abused our children.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, the father has full custody of my children even though he's abused them. And I'm not the only one that's in this type of a
That's Luzerne County, by the way.
Yes, I'm in Luzerne County. And I do have Judge Rogers, actually, as the judge. Do you meet with kids like that? Because now it's the parents.
I have the form with me
and
to
gets
request
the-
Judge Rogers appoint a CASA tomorrow.
Wow, yes.
got it?
Wait, you're doing CASAs for the kids?
So if I wanted to, I could have.
This is a dependency court, where you're in dependency court, right?
Now, at my point,
Custody we do not deal with.
okay, at my point, children and youth has
I'm
dropped
sorry.
out.
You're
They're
right.
done because they have gotten what they wanted. They wanted the father to have the
Back
kid.
up.
Once it's custody, we're out.
We
We're only in
should back up,
dependency.
because that was the point, because I think this is a misnomer here, and it's something we need to define.
Yeah.
I spoke to an attorney yesterday in Lackawanna County, who a lot of people know, and she told me that CASA in Lackawanna County is heavily involved in dependency court, so you're not involved in custody cases.
No.
But that's most of the people that I've been involved with, and myself included, as we may know, or don't know, is custody cases. And
Right.
and it's gross injustice, gross. There's a mom that,
They keep one foot in dependency court and one foot in custody court, so it's defined as custody, but there's still dependency type issues, but there are,
If,
We have not been to custody court yet. The last court hearing that we were at was when children and youth closed out. My kids have very graphically told your licensed therapist.
By 150 facts, what I'm getting
All
at.
right, hold on, let's,
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I want to do is I speak in some ways on behalf of many of the dozens. That's part of the reason why we're meeting here today is because of, I'll put my ego on the side, our efforts, okay? We wouldn't, otherwise I don't think we'd be here. So we have families that are torn apart. How can we possibly take CASA, maybe, and then move it into the, where we find the real damage is being done, if I may?
well, let me just cut in for 1 minute. Did I get this right, Rich, that Becca could actually sign a form and?
Well, we don't deal with custody issues.
That's fine.
The
That's the
child
point.
has to be independent of the court for us to have a role. Once that dependency is removed, we're out.
Is that by law, or how's that set up?
Yes.
Okay, there's a statute that
There's an
covers
agreement
this whole
that we
court.
have, that's right.
Okay.
So you
Could
do.
you guys try to lobby the courts to get,
It's not our role. Our role is to, go ahead.
Once, the way that CASA was set up by National CASA, the national organization, and it's set up with certain bylaws for how a CASA program runs and what it does. And we have to follow that. It's not something we can really change at the local court level. So at this point, we hear what you're saying, but we're tied to, the child has to be declared dependent for us to assign a CASA.
And it sounds like you guys don't want to get involved with custody battles of any sort. No, even if you were allowed to, it just sounds like it would be really, when you're dealing with the emotional ups and downs, you know?
No, I think that would be a great program, but unfortunately, that's not what our program does.
I like what you just said.
Yes.
Yeah.
but-
That's
yes.
music to my ears.
Then why don't we-
It's not
if
natural.
that's the case,
Now, that's supposed to be, in Lackawanna County, that's the function of the guardian ad litem
Oh,
program.
so we don't have to talk about where that's gotten us, right? So there's a woman that's not here right now, mom, that hasn't seen her child in 1 year, at all.
5 years.
At all, 1 year, no, we're talking about, excuse me, Lackawanna County. 1 year, she hasn't had a supervised visit in 1 year. There's many stories here, there's 8 years, 7 years, and we could go into that another time or today. 1 year, not a supervised visit. Guardian ad litems galore in her life. This is one story of many. Something is wrong. We know the system is broken. CASA does a wonderful job, Alex, we do a great job. We hear it. How can we meld, and Andy's here, and that's what you're trying to reach for here, is like, well, how do we get, and Walsh, man, you're right, but I believe these people actually wouldn't mind going on the front line and doing work, with the emotional work that they're doing now, so they wouldn't mind doing it with children. You know what I mean?
when you got the two parents fighting, believe me, it takes it to another level.
Well, I guess that's the question. I mean, could you get us as a network in touch with the powers that be in CASA and try to, maybe we could approach this organization to start them down this path and trying to reach into the custody issues? Because it sounds like you're doing
Dependency
great
and
work.
custody is so similar. I mean, if you're there for the best interest of the child, you gotta put the parents aside, no matter what's going
And
on
the
in
key
the
is,
situation.
one of the keys is no money.
Yeah.
Once you
no,
have money,
listen,
guardian ad
if I
litem,
could
the
do- If I
psychologist,
could do it and help
the
somebody's
psychologist,
life.
the money rules. The lawyers, we all know this, so we
Oh,
know this
yeah.
intimately, and we're agreeing, we're nodding. So
Yep.
once the money's involved, yes, Alex? It's a done deal.
Yep.
So
How do
if
you
we
get
can
to
get
the
to
people?
Andy's point, yeah, how do we do that? The need is huge.
That's a great idea.
Let me, it doesn't come down the way that, how do I say this the right way, that you want it to. It comes from the bottom up. We were asked by the new Director of Children and Youth to help them with sexual abuse cases. And the reason stems from things like this. Probably going to hit a chord right here. We have a case that was adjudicated while we were in court observation with our new CASAs.
Okay.
So when you become a CASA and you finish 30 hours of training and then sit you in court, you get to watch what goes on. People walk out feeling like you do. The case was a case of a child, the grandmother was sexually abused. The daughter, shockingly, was sexually abused. The case was about finish the sentence, the granddaughters who were sexually abused. Does anyone want to guess where children and youth put the sexually abused granddaughters? Who they went with?
With the abuser.
They went to grandmas. Who's only about 42, who's still seeing men she shouldn't see, but for whom over 6 months everything looked normal. Does anyone not think that in 10 years, that kid isn't going to, you know where this is going? So they've actually asked us to help, I'm going to give you the words of Krista Meckling, introduce logic into some of this for them, to help them with it. So all I'm doing to you is saying, you guys, and I appreciate it, you want to like fix the system. And all we can do is, there's an I and there's no S at the end of child on our sign. It's an I for the child. If we have 50 or 60 or 70 people standing up and introducing logic into the system, the ship will turn. I don't know any other way to turn the ship.
Was that a dependency, this case you just talked about, was that dependency? So maybe I'm not understanding the fine line between dependent, because in Lackawanna County, there's a guy in prison for rape, and the former guardian ad litem allowed unsupervised visits, and the rapist, Mr. Hunting, is in prison for life, for 50 years. And the former guardian ad litem allowed, come on.
What separates custody from,
Thank you, dependency.
what separates that?
Dependency is when
No
Children
pa-
and Youth, Office of Youth and Family Services goes before a judge, and the judge finds that the child is without proper parental care and control.
Even
and
if they
declares
stay,
them
even if the child
Dependent, even if that child remains in the home, living with the parents.
so it's like in limbo.
They find them dependent so that they can court order services for
Okay.
the family,
Okay.
even though that child is still in the home.
So it's like, that would be the same, it's similar to custody though, because if the court has decided that they're not sure what should happen, they then appoint a guardian ad litem. So why would they say, okay, in this situation, we're gonna do a guardian ad litem and not CASA?
In Lackawanna County, and this is confusing, there's the attorney for the child, there's a guardian ad litem, and there's a CASA.
Mhm.
The attorney for the child is appointed when the child is dependent. In children and youth is involved, the child is declared dependent. The attorney for the child represents the child, the mother will have a lawyer appointed, the father will have a lawyer appointed, or you'll get your own. But then a CASA can also be assigned in that case, because the attorney for the child has, 100 cases, and the CASA would only have one. The guardian ad litems only do custody. Every once in a while, there's a child who has both a guardian ad litem and an attorney for the child, because the case was in custody and went to dependency, or in dependency and went to custody. I'm not sure how they sort that out. It hasn't come up yet. I'm sure it could happen. But that's basically the difference. Custody is between the parents. Like, you could have a dependency case going on and a custody case. Children and youth could have dependency. The kids could be in one home. The father might have filed to get custody of the kid who's in the mom's home but dependent with children and youth. All of these players could be involved. So if you have a dependency case and a custody case, you could ask for a CASA.
If it's just dependency and CASA is involved, would the child have an attorney?
Yes.
In Luzerne County, the child's attorney is the guardian ad litem.
Well, how is it if the guardian ad litem isn't an attorney and only a psychologist?
No, there's 4 guardian ad litems for all the dependent children in Luzerne County.
And are they all?
They're all attorneys.
Mine is not, and it is Luzerne County, and it's Ned Delaney, and he is not an attorney, and my daughter's guardian ad litem.
In dependency court,
I don't know, it's Judge Rogers.
I'd have to, look into that. I mean, my understanding is all 4 of those guardian ad litems, Danielle, where she just left, but all of them are attorneys. They're all
That's what I
great
understood,
attorneys.
that a guardian ad litem had to be an attorney,
They do, they should be.
and mine is not.
Ned Delaney, that's
It's
what.
Ned Delaney.
Okay, so that's easy enough to look up.
Interesting.
It's easy enough to look up.
Right, that's easy enough to find out.
In Lackawanna County, they're all attorneys.
Okay,
Whether-
But what I'm saying is they represent the child in Luzerne County. They are the child's attorney.
Right,
The parent has their own attorney.
right,
Children and Youth has an attorney,
right,
and I'm never quite sure why they're even in the courtroom.
right.
They interview the children and youth worker in this strange phenomenon that I haven't quite put my finger on under there. Seriously. But I can tell you this, again, and all I can tell you is from the bottom up,
yeah.
request to CASA. I have seen the judge, and I can see this. While everyone's talking, looking, and we coach our advocates to have a 5-point, their recommendations and bullet points, so that they can be made.
Well, I like that.
What you people out here should do that are in domestic relations court is just request a, and I'm not trying to impose anything on you, but request a CASA.
Absolutely.
You heard about this program and.
Yeah,
you want
and from the bottom up, because we all know, Andy, we could fight this battle, I mean, Bruce, you know.
I have a question regarding the quantity. I'm confused a little bit. The quantity of cases in Luzerne County, how many did they say?
So there's
Rich.
500.
500 kids, there's 4 guardian ad
It
litem.
seems to be a huge disparity, something, just as a red flag. It's a red flag and I wanted to explain. It's something, how many?
4.
4, and how many?
In
4 for 500
Lackawanna
kids.
County,
And in Lackawanna County, how many were in this?
Last count, there were 200 kids involved with children in youth in Lackawanna County. And there are 2 attorneys for the child.
Two, what did you say?
Attorneys.
Attorneys for the child, which is the same.
But Brenda Coble and Corinne Field, there's 4 guardian litem's being assigned right
Those
now.
are guardian ad litems for
I thought you said attorneys, I'm sorry.
dependency.
Oh, dependency.
There are 2 for, let's just call them all guardian ad litem, just to make this less.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's attorney ad litem and guardian ad litem.
Yes.
Attorney ad litem is attorney for the child, and guardian is the best interest of the child.
Yeah, it's a
One
different
is the legal
role.
interest versus the best interest.
Yeah, it's a very fine distinction,
You see that, yeah.
which one of the lawyers explained to me at one point, and I didn't grasp it immediately. I'll tell you, it's that fine.
There's a lot I don't know.
Actually, it was Andrew Lazar, who's gone to work for Luzerne County now. He's a great guy, really. Nice to-
Yeah, we just met.
Yeah.
But let me tell you something else that's a CASA. I'll tell you what the judge said to us. Don't worry about whether it's legal, don't worry about whether it's legalese, tell me what to do. That's a pretty powerful freaking statement from the lady with the hammer. Yeah.
Okay, you're saying that you go through, the, reports and everything, documents and everything, and there are, documents for children and youth, is that it? Like, do you actually go to the parents?
We go to the parents, we go to the psychologist for the children, we go to the school, the counselors, the grandparents, the counselor of dad's prison.
So you're not relying on just children and youth's documents, which could be twisted around and.
We're
that's
relying
what
on
I'm
the
trying to
personal
say.
relationships we develop with the family members and the child. That's what we rely on more than anything else.
Yeah, and I don't see, I mean, to me, that's the key, that's the core.
How do you buck that? Although I see it, maybe I'm wrong, and tell me if I'm wrong, it's no problem, I wanna know. I see that as, how do you buck the big shot attorneys, the big shot children and youth pavilion, the big shot former guardian ad litem, the big shot judge that holds all the power and kicks us out of courtrooms and has stolen children's and my kids from my life. And I don't mean to make this is not about me, I'm speaking again, but how does CASA get involved in somebody's life to stop this? This, Luzerne County? It's happening. Lackawanna County, one woman left, there's other people here. How do we effectuate some change a little bit, with volunteers? How do we do this? There has to be more transparency.
Like,
It's
we're
something
trying to
very
set up
important.
our own CASA here. A little bit different though. Do what you do, but just take it a little step further.
Who here is from Lackawanna County? Who here is from Luzerne County?
Apathetic.
Who's here from
Luzerne,
Lackawanna?
Corbett.
No question.
Lackawanna?
Lackawanna's raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay,
One just left, yeah.
yeah, and the rest of them are yours.
Yeah. Yeah. What, no, I mean, again, I go back to, you guys are frustrated and kind of want to top down this. That's why I said there's the I and no S child. The way that you change it is by coming back up. I wish I could tell you what we're doing, what's about to happen with one of the reasons they have 200 and we have 500 is because of the school districts in Luzerne County. And we don't have enough hours in the day for me to go through how many kids we have that were bullied, became truant, and are now separated from their parents in Luzerne County. Now, that's something we're working on fixing. And we're working on it from about 4 different angles. From the bottom up, from the judge down,
From the next county over.
from the next county over, from a little expose that may happen somewhere at some point in time as people go through what happens in special ed, just as a bit of knowledge. The intermediate units by law are supposed to have a citizen advocacy advisory committee by law that's set up, and their primary role is to oversee the way special ed is done.
Citizens have.
Yeah, it has to be 51% citizens in this group formed of each intermediate unit. There's an intermediate unit in Luzerne County. How many people think there is or ever has been this advisory thing commissioned and working? You guys are smart. It's never happened. So I guess CASA can't be out there, and I never said this, I can't be out there advocating that kind of, you guys are, you want to do something with education, get that thing up and cranking.
There
And-
was one in Lackawanna County,
There isn't in Luzerne.
and it's been enacted. That one-
What, a citizens ad, what is it?
I
Or
don't
not,
remember
just
the
curious.
exact term.
I can get you the information.
Yes.
Let's just say there is a citizens group that should be overseeing special ed.
Special
It
ed.
isn't happening in Luzerne County.
Judy gets back Monday, and we're, you know what that's all about.
And that is not the role of CASA to be stirring up that kind of activism. But it is the role of us to educate the judges and individually for our children to be kicking butt and taking names. We are getting educational trust funds set up, as you are, for the kids who've been abused by the education system.
If I could make an observation, I mean, no matter what, how many people want to get involved or how we're going to change it, we know that it's a process that might not be able to get changed from the top down. But we've said all along, Bruce, you said it, Andy, I know you brought this up, but what you're saying is from the bottom up, one person at a time. Bruce, you said it, you said one person at a time, we could change it one person at a time. We might not be able to change it for your kids, but hopefully your kids don't have to go through the same problem if we get people that are active in the community, people that care about the community, that are willing to spend an hour, 5 hours, 10 hours a month, and put yourself into that child's role, and then you're in the courts. You'll know. I don't have to guess this, right, Rich or Joan? If you spend 10 hours or 20 hours in a kid's life, and you go to that courtroom, and all of a sudden, something is not going right because of what you said and what you'll know in here, and everybody else will know also that, wait a minute, there's something amiss.
In my case, and I'm going to tell you this for 2 reasons. First, I'll tell you the story, then I'll tell you why I tell you the story. I was in court for my kid. And like I said, a lot of these kids go forward and then they slip backward. And the special ed supervisor in the courtroom kept saying, he's failing at this, he's failing at that, he's failed to do this, he's failed that. She was speaking, and I was waiting, and I was boiling. This kid's father died when he was in residential treatment. The only reason he went there is because he was bullied. And he never got an IEP. While he was away, his dad died, his mom had a stroke. He comes home, he's put in cyber school without any assistance. School district tells him, we'll give you a tutor as soon as you pass the next term successfully. Had her hauled into court to answer for that one. Now she's calling him a failure. It was my turn to speak. We'd all agreed on what the outcome was going to be, and it was a positive outcome for him. Judge says, do you have anything to say? I said, he's not a failure. I get emotional now telling you the story. He's not a failure. And when I left, him and his brother, who's his caretaker, looked at me and they're like, you were really mad, dude. We thought you were going to hit somebody. I'm like, did it show? Then I was going to drive over to McDonald's and ended up parked in the Lowe's parking lot because I forgot where I was going because I was still angry when I was driving home. I tell you that for 2 reasons. You can affect change too. That story, you're going to remember. And when you work with these individual kids, even though we're not, quote, allowed to tell their stories too openly, it's those anecdotal stories which change everything. It changes people's hearts, it changes the way they view things, it disarms a lot of people who would otherwise continue to be jerks, because it puts a face on a statistic and it puts a name on it, and it's a very powerful, powerful experience to have these CASAs out there.
It's like, I'm sure you guys all heard that starfish story.
Well, Alex shared that. Great story. That's going to be printed up and going to the
It's gonna go in the Gazette,
It's
for
going to the
sure.
Gazette, absolutely. That's a great story. Thank you.
Systems change is a lot harder. It's a lot more complicated. It takes longer. But like right now, you can help a kid. You know,
Yeah.
you can help one and make a difference for that child.
And this is what
Yeah.
we do. This is what we do. This is what I've been doing. This is what Lou's doing. But if I would be remiss, especially with some of the faces here, if I didn't say, and I've witnessed this firsthand, intimately, in front of George Marge Moyle and Chester Hart, threatened with jail, if I speak the truth, threatened, harassed, and intimidated to be a good parent. And I don't stand by myself any longer. And I had the courage to stand in front of them and then rat on Danielle Ross and make sure that she was out, not in any child's life. And she may be actually in jail, possibly got a psychology degree to go along with her law degree. Because she told me before she went to prison, I'm going to get my psychology degree so I could do more, better for kids. Yeah, great job she did. The point is that this is what happens in the courtroom when people speak up and tell the truth. We get intimidated, and that's part of the transfer. So there is the reality is real.
It is true that a lot of times the judge in the court will listen more to what they consider to be an impartial third party than they would to a parent. Because parents are, of course, emotionally very invested in their children, and so they tend to think maybe the parent is, biased. Maybe the parent isn't necessarily looking at this from outside of their own self-interest. But that's why a CASA can be such a great asset.
Neutrality is essential.
Right.
But it's
They might not believe you, but if the CASA says the same thing, they're more likely to
But
say,
instead, the reality is you get a psychologist for $5,000, the guardian litem's getting paid, but everybody has their skin in the game, except for the parent. Who's doing it? So who is that neutral person in Lackawanna County?
When a judge appoints either a CASA or a guardian ad litem, do they appoint a CASA solely on their own decision? Yes. Judge Rogers.
They tell CASA, I would like you to put a court appointed, I would like you to assign someone to the case.
So there's no
We make the match.
input from the legal side, no input from
Oh,
either
God.
side lawyers that says, oh, we want a CASA.
I can tell you how I do this. It's different a little bit in Lackawanna County. So someone says, I want a CASA. It could be the parent's lawyer, children and youth, the child's attorney, the judge, anybody. There's a referral form. You know, it comes to me. And of course, if anybody objects to having a CASA appointed, the kid says, I don't want an advocate, I don't need an advocate, I'm 16 years old, I can take care of myself. That's a viable objection, whether they know their own best interest or not. So there's an opportunity for anybody to object. And then what I do is I ask the attorneys, I've reviewed this, we're going to assign a CASA, I'm looking at assigning this person. Do you know of any conflicts of interest? Like, are you representing this CASA on a land deal? Is that your cousin? This is Lackawanna County, everybody is somebody's cousin.
Right.
Just to make sure that there aren't any conflicts of interest. And we've actually had some come up after the fact, like grandma's gonna get custody and it turns out that the CASA and the grandma are neighbors. Or all kinds of funny things come up, so we have to run through our CASA assignments. And I match them, like the one we have a young mom with 2 little boys, match with a CASA who's a middle-aged mom with 2 grown sons, who are also, a year apart. Because she knows, she's been there, she knows how hard it is to have 2 toddlers running around, poking each other's eyes out or whatever little boys do. And she's great. I mean, she has the sympathy. She's been there. She knows what it's like to be a young parent. And that's the kind of people we try to match people up. You know, if you, like for example, a parent who's dealing with a domestic violence issue, we'll try to match with the CASA, who may have had some experience with domestic violence in the past. So, but yeah, I do run them by the lawyers. Not to say you have a say about whether there's a CASA, just is there a conflict of interest
Right.
with this person?
And if there, say, like down the road, there would be a conflict of interest that would come up with something change in that, with the CASA in that case?
Yeah, we can ask to have a different CASA facility.
Oh, okay.
Like say you find out that CASAs are people.
Right.
I mean, they're people, and say the CASA is, you know, dating the, you know, father's best friend or something, and they just find out. I mean, that's gonna be a conflict of interest. So, yeah, CASAs are human, foster parents are human, all of us are human.
Do you need to be from the county? If I live in Wyoming County, can I apply to either one of you two guys and apply for a CASA?
We have Monroe County and
I
Wyoming.
might be better off in Luzerne, by the way, but I'm not sure.
Good night. I live on the other side of the river.
Oh, do you? Okay, good. So,
The other side.
Are the majority of your children placed in foster care?
Most of them are. We have, I think, 3 cases that are in the home, and the rest of them are kids who are in foster care or in residential treatment or something like that.
And you, sir?
All scenarios. Some with parents, some with moms, some in treatment facilities, some in foster homes. I wouldn't be able to tell you right off the top how the numbers go.
referring back to what Joan had said originally, and that certainly struck a chord with me, is the goal was to try as best as you can to keep your children with the families, and I think that is...
Absolutely.
Now, we're struggling with that a bit with Luzerne County. Judge Gartley, when she formed the original CASA, and Rogers has been buying into this, they want us on the hardest cases first. And now they're leaning very much towards some of the educational cases. I can tell you that in the office, we would rather be on the cases early, where we can operate like you are with a family plan where the CASA's energy might be poured into helping teach some parenting skills and working in the house to stop the separation from occurring. There's a lot of good neurology and trauma data that says the separation is a far more traumatic event than the trauma that was in the house.
Most of our kids that are in care now are actually in care with a relative.
Makes a lot of sense.
Most of them are with
Common.
their grandparents.
Well, I tried that, and my sister owns a temp agency, and she tried that kinship, and they denied it because of the hours, that they didn't want my daughter to spend that many hours in daycare, you know, and that's why they didn't, you know, allow my sister to stay with my daughter.
And then on the other side, there's some kind of strange things like, if you want to be a foster parent, you gotta go through all kinds of training and all kinds of police clearances and all kinds of background. If you're the grandma, here you go. So it's interesting, the family doesn't have to go through all the clearances, so that's another case where CASAs could be like, hey, you know, I was over there and I'm not really sure.
What I find weird in a way is she has 4 kids, my grandkids. They removed one because they say it was neglected, but they left the other 3 with her. So how come they say they neglect one and not the other 3?
And I got a therapist from the Bethlehem Hospital because they were saying that it was neglect, but yet the therapists and all that from the hospital in Danville, they said that my daughter had a problem with textured foods, that's why she was gagging, and that's why she was spitting out the food. And they still went ahead and they said that it was medical neglect. When I went to the first appointment hearing, they said that it was because I missed 15 or more appointments from September of 2013 to March of 2014, which my lawyer, who was a paid lawyer, broke down all those dates and said, well, that's a lie, because on this date, children and youth was the one who rescheduled, and I have all the text messages, absolutely, from the
Right.
caseworker.
Without,
So, the reason they could say one kid was at risk and the others weren't is because they do that, because they need more care. Like, it's obviously, it's a lot easier to take care of a typical child than one that has feeding issues, sensory difficulties, and disability. That's
So if the
why.
goal is to reunite the children, with the family, why is it that, I'm not saying all, but the majority of the cases, they try to twist everything. I haven't seen my daughter since December. She's turning 3 years old on the 30th of this month. On the first day of next month is the terminacy hearing, where they'll decide whether to put her up for adoption or send her back.
and this is Luzerne, correct?
And I have been receiving phone calls almost on a daily basis from my court-appointed lawyer, where he has told me that I have two options. The first option is that I give up my rights willingly in the court so they can put her up for adoption. And my second option is to keep on fighting for my daughter and to risk placing my daughter, my other children in foster care. So it's like they're making me choose.
No-win
in between.
situation.
Story.
Exactly.
No-win situation, win-win for them,
One
but
story.
no-win for you.
More of these stories
That's,
in Missouri.
the reason that the reason they use to tell people to sign that voluntary termination is because of what's called aggravated circumstances. That if one child of a parent has had their rights involuntarily terminated, it creates aggravated circumstances, which makes it easier for them to remove other children.
But if
From
I
Big
have-
that they
but if I
created the
have,
whole situation
If I
to
have the
begin with.
evidence from
She's not neglecting any of them.
none of them,
She
and
take good
and
care of
I
them.
have
What county are
the
you in?
Luzerne, the pediatricians reviews. You know, they see my kids and they come to the home and everything is okay. It's been a year. So why is it that now they're gonna wanna take my other kids away?
Who's your caseworker?
Kathy Stegmans. The therapist, my daughter's former therapist, which Children and Youth made her resign from the case because she went and testified on my favor. They sent a letter from, the foster mom sent a letter to her agency saying that me and her had a friendship type relationship and that she was talking about the caseworker with the foster parent, which was a lie, and they made her resign and they put one of their own therapists from Children and Youth. And on September 9th of last year, I had my lawyer send her, Thomas Sharkey, send her a subpoena. And the hearing was at 9 o'clock in the morning. They sent me a letter saying that they were gonna move it to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, okay? So when I was getting ready at 12:30, when I was getting,
Sharkey call for office?
I'm sorry?
Attorney Sharkey is still your attorney?
Here's the problem, that day of the hearing, I was supposed to be there before 2 o'clock. So I'm getting ready to get in the vehicle with the therapist at 12:30 in the afternoon. And my lawyer, Tommy Sharkey, sent me a text message saying, I'm sorry, the hearing is over, it went well. I asked for a continuance and it was denied, I was not there. Okay, I didn't know what was going on. I just received a letter from the court saying that my efforts were minimal, but I had no idea what happened. I reported him with the Bar Association and I gave them all the proof. And they said that they were gonna dismiss it because of lack of evidence or something like that. So they didn't.
Okay, but-
Request a CASA. That's really all you can do.
Request a CASA, there you go.
That's all vacant, it's not what you can do.
That's all we can do.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that's.
Yes, but is it even though my terminacy hearing, that's what it said, is on the,
It's a termination of parental rights hearing to CPR?
They're gonna decide whether to, have her come back home, because the thing is
Make the
that
first.
the problem here is that they set me up for a parenting program. When I had one program, one day left, they canceled that program and they made me start all over again. Okay, so when they said that they were gonna do it inside the agency, then 2 days later, they called me and they said that they were gonna do it in Wilkes-Barre.
Vanessa, because our time is limited too,
I'm
and I'm
sorry.
sorry. No, that's good. You might have just hit the jackpot. I mean, which is good for yourself, okay?
So they'll be able to help me in such little time?
You're gonna give it to Rich, and once again, now you have people from the ground up, maybe at least talking to the judge and saying, wait a minute, maybe before you run down the highway, you might be able to look into this a little bit more.
Let's, you know who she is?
One at a time.
Oh, sorry.
Right, no, I meant one at a time, right? We can only help one at a time, like we said.
That's the motto, right?
So in this case, time is of the essence. When's the termination hearing? When's the terminacy?
On the first day of next month.
April.
Yes.
So we must have her information.
I got another quick question for these guys before.
Rally some.
By the way, if you
people
want
from
to
Luzerne County.
volunteer to be a CASA and are interested in being contacted, okay? We're gonna talk more with
We got a couple
myself.
over here, I know.
April 7th is our training in Luzerne, and when does yours start, Joan?
I don't have the date scheduled.
And once you're trained in one place, can you actually transfer out, or no, that's a little harder, Rich?
Yeah, the talk.
He doesn't want that, yeah, once he gets some signed up. Hey, there was, one of the questions I have is that you guys have been around for a while. Do you know of CASAs, and I believe you have an example. You had a CASA, but then it just stopped.
Disappeared.
The whole program disappeared.
Excuse me, I've seen the guardian ad litem only once.
Name, what's the name of the guardian ad litem in Luzerne? Don't know the name.
Okay, just
A
get
girl,
to
a
it.
girl or
Okay.
a lady? Lisa Bowman?
Oh, Lisa's the supervisor in Lackawanna.
What county?
So she did.
Northumberland. She
Northumberland.
said her name is Judy Jones and she's from Luzerne County.
Hey, Rich,
You had a CASA.
I'm sorry.
In what county?
Northumberland.
Okay.
Rich,
I
because
can't
we have to
be
leave you right at 8 o'clock.
We have 15
Rich,
minutes. We have 15 minutes.
this was Northumberland, CASA.
Northumberland.
Yes.
And they just disappeared?
It comes out of Williamsport.
Judy Jones.
Judy Jones runs like a 3-county. She's got 2 or 3 counties. You got
They're not there no more. They disappeared. Northumberland County. They were inside the courthouse on the left-hand side and then they were gone.
Oh, the office itself?
Can't help. And I got a letter from one of the ladies down there. And then I tried calling Judy Jones at the Northumberland number and there was nothing.
Where's the
She's in
jurisdiction?
Williamsport, isn't she?
She told me Luzerne County and Northumberland County, which is,
Well, Judy Jones started the Luzerne, she came over for the first few months, there was a Luzerne County program,
she
and kind
said
of got
that
it
she
going.
was working in jointly with Lackawanna County, not, I don't know what year this is. It was either 2008, 2009, or 2010.
Oh, I don't know.
Don't know.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
none of us were here then.
Yeah, I
Rich
don't
and I
know.
have both been doing this for a year, right?
Right, yeah.
But they're gone now?
I don't know.
She's still around, she's in Williamsport.
I think she's living here. I tried Googling her name and CASA and seeing what comes up.
I
Like Homing County?
I've not been shocked at many things.
Rich, I need a couple of those.
I mean, at
photos.
first I've been shocked,
And,
but now I'm not shocked.
I think if that's all for the CASA folks, they're good, and then we could, I know a bunch have some questions amongst ourselves and everything else. I want to thank you both for coming today. I mean,
Thank you for having us.
This was very informative.
Very enlightening.
Very enlightening. And for me, a little bit encouraging, knowing that, that there's
More people that care.
the more people that care.
And they're not getting paid to care.
That's it. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. So,
Each of them.
you got one too?
One year.
Yeah.